they are part of her story now, and I am so grateful to them, and I'm so grateful to share it with you, so that if this is something you're thinking about, you might consider it. Hi there, welcome to our channel. My name is Emma, and I have a 10-month-old daughter named Ren. After traveling to over 60 countries and living in a whole bunch of places, I finally found home, and in the middle of the pandemic I decided to have a baby by myself. So I had Ren 10 months ago, and this is a story of home and our life and raising a baby on my own, and also how we came to be where we are right now. So thanks for joining, and I hope some of this is helpful. So the first mom I received donor milk from was actually a friend of a friend's, and I wasn't planning on it or even thinking about it, but because of my awesome mom group friends, the word was out that I was having issues with supplying milk, and that I had switched to formula, and that Ren's tummy wasn't necessarily great on the formula, and I was open to alternatives. So my friend introduced me to her friend, and her milk supply was really good, and she had also put away a whole bunch of frozen milk for when she went back to work. Now, of course, COVID meant that she wasn't going back to work, and so she had all this frozen milk that was expiring. So I won't go into the details of the rules and regulations around milk, but just basically 6 months in a normal fridge and then a year in a deep freezer. You know, look up the details on that, don't take my word for it, but that's generally what the recommendations are. And so her milk, having planned for going back to work in the fall, was starting to expire. So I took some, and it was actually quite a lot, and it fit my whole tiny freezer. And I started giving it to Ren. Now, Ren had never refused any sort of food at that point, and to this day has never refused food. She is a really good eater, and so she eats almost everything. And I wasn't sure about it, but I was also kind of desperate. And while there's nothing wrong with formula and how you feed your baby, I liked the idea that she would be getting milk, breast milk, even if it wasn't from me. And because I'm a solo mom and I change all the diapers, which lots of moms do, it's not just solo moms, it meant that her poos mattered to me. And for anybody who's seen the difference between breastfed poos and formula poos, there is a difference, and I can tell you from my experience that there is a difference. And so when she went on formula, it just wasn't the same, and I really wanted to be using breast milk. So my friend's friend gave me a bunch of milk. Now that started going really well, and while I thought it would be a pretty consistent supply, it turns out that while she had milk, it wasn't necessarily disposable all the time, because she was actually keeping some of it. And so when she let me know that it may not be coming on a regular basis, I started to inquire and to look into other options. At the moment, Ren's 10 months, and she is drinking 6 ounces of donated breast milk. When she was 3 months, she was doing 20 to 30 ounces. Now, I was still breastfeeding. I had decided that because I'm a single mom and she wasn't in any sort of childcare and I wasn't going back to work, that pumping didn't really fit our lifestyle. So lots of moms with low supply will go to the pump. Yeah? And will pump milk, and that's great, and that sometimes increases your supply. So if you're looking to increase your supply, donated breast milk may not be the route that you will take, right? But for somebody who is looking to supplement and not necessarily increase their supply, although that said, I did do a number of different pumping sessions. I did take supplements, and that seemed to have worked a little bit from Legendary Milk. They're legendary, and I think that that helped a little bit, but there was no way I was going to be able to feed this kid, because this kid was hungry. So I started to look into other sources of breast milk. Now there's a couple of places I went to. The first is word of mouth. So my mom's group both in the WhatsApp and then also on our Zoom calls that we would have once a week. I put it out there that if anybody had extra milk, any extra breast milk, had an oversupply or something that they weren't going to use that was going to go expired, that I would be willing to take it, willing and wanting to take it. And then I also reached out to my lactation consultant. So because it was such a struggle to feed Ren in the early days, I was going to a lactation consultant every week. So the first mom, as I explained, was a friend of a friend, and then that was starting to, the supply wasn't going to be as consistent, and so I started reaching out. Now, this is a horrible name, and yet it's a beautiful site. It is called Human Milk for Human Babies. It's a Facebook group, and again, the name is horrendous, is my interpretation, except for it's really clear that that's what it is, right? It is Human Milk for Human Babies. And they have lots of rules and regulations about how you can ask for milk or donate milk. And the other thing about it is it's region specific. So I joined the California one and I made my post. I suppose I could go back and see the posts and post them here. So, although I think they delete them. Anyways, okay, so I made a post. I said, I'm a mom, here's my baby, you know, she's really hungry, I've got a low supply, is anybody willing to donate milk? And I got responses. And now I got responses from people I didn't know. I got responses from moms who had never met me, who I'd never met, and weren't even part of my, like, mom tribe or anything like that. So here comes the next stage. Oh my God, and my hands are we all done? All right, where was I? All right, so the first mom I didn't know or didn't know anybody who knew that I got donor milk from was this fantastic woman about 2.5 hours north of me. So in my post on Human Milk for Human Babies, I said willing to drive up to, maybe I said 3 hours. Single mom, no childcare, no family. I knew that it would be just me and Ren in a car, and so I was only willing to go so far, but I believed that it would be okay if I timed it right around the nap times. So she was about 3 months old, three and a half months old, I guess, and we jumped in the car. I had arranged with this woman that she was gonna give me something like 250 ounces, which is a lot. Now, Ren was drinking like 20 ounces a day, so really that's only like 10 days, but it seemed like a lot compared to some of the other moms, and I had lined up a few different moms, but because this was a good amount of milk, I was willing to drive. And I guess I was a little bit curious about how Ren would do in the car for that long. So we jumped in the car early one morning. I timed it really well. So we were napping most of the way there, and then we arrived, and then napping most of the way back. I believe I fed her in between, like in the middle somewhere. I probably did a diaper change in the car as well, early days, which were not always so smooth. And I think we did okay. It's funny, a bit of a blur, but I'm pretty sure we did okay. So I pull up to this beautiful big house in like a total suburban area near San Jose, or just north of San Jose. And this wonderful woman comes out, she's holding this adorable baby, about 3.5, 4 months, maybe 5 months, something like that. Really, really cute. They were both wearing pajama onesies, and they both had like cute decal on the front that was almost exactly the same. And we were both wearing white Crocs. Now, I am proud of my white Crocs. I am a mom, and I wore Crocs before I was a mom, but let me tell you that like Crocs are amazing for mom life. So we were both wearing white Crocs, and there was this immediate moment of trust, this immediate moment of, I don't know you, and you're about to help feed my daughter with liquid that comes out of your body, but I am so grateful, and you seem pretty normal and pretty awesome. And so we went into the house, she invited us in, obviously. I met the husband. She explained to me that, and so each one of the moms that I have received donor milk from, and there were maybe 12 in total, all have a different reason, all have a different story, all have a different like background. And so this mom, as my first kind of introduction to this world of unknown donor producers or donor milk donors, anyways, is that she was on her third baby. She'd had a baby really young and then a second kid, and she had really, really low supply for her second kid and struggled with breastfeeding and struggled with supply. And this time around, for whatever reason, again, who knows why some mom have oversupply and some mom have undersupply and some mom don't breastfeed at all and some mom breastfeed forever and some dry up and some don't. I mean, it's all biological, but also just such a crapshoot in some ways, right? And you can do whatever you can, but there's an element of letting go, right? Control what you can control and not what you can't. And so some moms will slave over the pump and some moms will just give up and move to formula. And again, to each his own, there's no judgment whatsoever. And so who knows? But this time around, she had an oversupply. And so she brought me to the house and she bought this like second freezer, this like big deep freezer. She opened it up and it was just chockers, just full of bagged, perfectly bagged, dated, organized breast milk. And she explained to me that her baby breastfeeds all day. And this baby was chunky and cute and happy and bubbly. And all she did was pump once in the morning and once at night. And this is what she got. And when I had chatted with her on text initially, she had said, give me the week and I'll create your 200 ounces. So again, I'm not great with numbers, but I just remember thinking, she's gonna produce that amount of milk on top of feeding her baby in 1 week? That's incredible. And she did. And I was maybe her 4th or 5th mom that she donated to. And I never went back. Even though I was hoping to, but I think by the time we went through that milk and some of the other milk that I got, we didn't need it. Are you almost done? And so I think so we didn't go back. So we just had this one donation, and I brought a big cooler and I put all the milk in the big cooler with a bunch of ice. And that was the first time I picked up donated milk from another mom, and it was awesome. And we were on our way to months and months and months and thousands of ounces of donated breast milk. It definitely was a lot of work to organize, coordinate, make sure that the baby was ready to go, get the cooler, make sure I have the ice. Again, choose your hard is one of those phrases that sometimes applies and sometimes doesn't. So it's hard to feed a baby. It's hard to afford the formula, if that's where you're going. To breastfeed, in my case, it was hard. To pump, to juggle pumping and bottles and breastfeeding. And it was hard to go and pick up the donated breast milk. It was a choice I made. I'm really delighted about my choice. But it was a lot of work, and maybe not everybody would have wanted to do that. I went on multiple road trips with Ren to go pick up milk, and it took time. But the thing is that donated breast milk is donated. It's free. And so it saved actually a lot of money on formula. Gas prices weren't as bad as they are as I'm recording this. And so it economically fit my needs. And then also it fit what I wanted, which was a breastfed baby with breast milk, and it was really great. All right, so here are my top 3 questions or concerns that I get when I tell other people that I used donated breast milk. Sorry, excuse me. Hi. Ren has gone from eating next to me to playing next to me, so we'll see how long she lets me do this before nap time. All right, anyways, top 3. First is motivation. So why are these women doing this? If you don't understand the unregulated milk, donor milk community system, then you don't understand that there is no financial compensation. There are places that you can buy milk. So milk banks are regulated, the milk's been tested. It often goes to high needs babies, like NICU babies, preemie babies, totally legit and totally regulated. It's quite expensive, and it's fine. And it didn't really work for us. I wasn't in a high need mom per se, and on a budget. So people are like, well, these women, you know, like they could have nefarious motivation, right? Because they're getting paid. I didn't pay any of these women. Sometimes they asked for bags, like milk bags, specified like brand, whatever, right? They wanted bags so that they could use bags to fill up the milk, right? And so that is one concern and one question I get a lot of. The other is contamination and what this milk is. So breast milk is amazing. Liquid gold, you know, cures almost anything, right? Like if your kid has a rash, give them breast milk. If they've got something in their eye, give them breast milk, right? If they're sick, give them breast milk. So it's this wonderfully curative product, and yet it can get contaminated if it's left out, if it's not frozen, if it's not stored frozen properly, if it's, you know, refrozen. There are all these rules and regulations. That said, one of the rules and regulations that changed over the course of her first 6 months or so was you weren't meant to pour like warm, like just recently pumped breast milk into cold breast milk, and then they just decided that that was fine. And so all those women who were like trying to figure out how to get the breast milk temperature correct and the same before they combined them, it was like, never mind, just kidding. So I'm not a scientist and I'm not a lactation specialist, but I realized that some of these rules and regulations are really important, and some of them feel like it's just an extra burden. And so you know, how this milk is stored. I met most of the moms that I received from, and they're all just kind of moms, you know, like they're moms like me. They all have a story. There's all a reason. I had this amazing mom who I bought we call it the office, although it's also known as the circle of neglect, secondhand off of, and she learned that I received donated breast milk and that I was in need, and she would like walk over at the end of her shift, because I lived near where she worked, with carrying like a bag of breast milk that she had pumped that day to give to me. And it was amazing. And so these are just moms, right? For the most part. Again, there's no financial motivation, as I explained, and so their motivation is usually altruistic. Now, I hold no liability or claim no liability, right? If you're going to go this route, do your due diligence, do your research, trust your gut, right? Like go with what you believe. Just remember that some of the rules and regulations out there are made by men, and we don't know as much as we need to know. And so contamination, there are a number of diseases that can be passed through breast milk. COVID is not one of them. HIV, AIDS, Hep B or Hep C, and CMV. And I looked into all of this. What's the worst case scenario? Those are pretty gnarly case scenarios. That said, all these women had babies. All these women like just gave birth generally. They're all babies around Ren's age. And in the context of where I am, I guess California, there was a slim chance of that. Also, it's not a guarantee. Again, this is a high risk statement, but it's not a guarantee. If there was HIV AIDS contaminated breast milk, if Ren has some, it's not a guarantee that she's going to get HIV AIDS, right? One of the benefits of spreading out the donors across 11, 12, 13 different women was that Ren never got enough of one different breast milk supply to potentially make an impact, right? And again, I'm not an expert, I'm not a scientist. This is the thing about, you know, other moms and YouTube, but she had the most breast milk from me because I continue to breastfeed. I'm still breastfeeding at 10 months. And so the risk was low. I used to have a fancy career before I became a mom, and one of my jobs was risk assessment. And I do risk assessment in everything I do, in my head or on paper, or talking it out with other people. But I did my risk assessment, and I realized that it was a low risk situation for her to have any sort of contamination from the milk. Also, if any of the milk was bad, she would have potentially a reaction to it, right? So if it had gone off, she would have a reaction. At no point over the course of the time that she's had donor breast milk, again, we're still doing it, and she's 10 months, did she have any sort of reaction to any of the milk. She never rejected any of the milk. She downed it like a dream, like a monster, whatever, however you want to look at it. She just downed it easily and never had any sort of adverse reaction. So this led me to the conclusion that all of it was generally pretty good. All right, third. Oh yes, a lot doing these YouTube videos. So contamination, motivation. Maybe it's just two. I think that's it. People are just concerned that like there's a financial motivation and that this breast milk might be contaminated and that these, yeah, and then it might be bad. Anyway, so those are my top two concerns of what other people see as concerns or issues with getting donated breast milk. All right, I'm gonna try to get this last segment in before nap time and before I run out of energy and steam, because as an introvert, this is quite a lot of work for me. But here we go. All right, here are some of the benefits I foresaw and have also been reminded of from others of why donated breast milk worked for us and led to potential awesomeness. Okay, the first is that she is exposed to other antibodies. So I give her antibodies, breast milk has tons of antibodies in them, and she would receive this from other moms. If they were a little bit sick, there was all this concern around COVID, so COVID recovery or COVID vaccines. I didn't get vaccinated until she was like 6 weeks, so I had a dose. I think I had both doses by the time we started doing this. Had I not, she could have gotten some antibodies from the breast milk of moms who had been vaccinated. Maybe they have had other illnesses, or maybe they were sick while they were doing it. So tons of antibodies could be passed down in the milk, thus strengthening her immune system. Now, knock on wood, but she's 10 months old, she's never been sick, she's had maybe a runny nose, she's been to daycare, she's been exposed to sick kids, and we've traveled on a plane, and we still haven't been sick. So that is maybe a number of reasons, but I believe that part of that is because she has had this strengthening of antibodies and immunity from all of these moms' milk. So I keep looking down because she's there and she's cute and I can't keep my eyes off of her because she's reading her book naked. It's amazing. All right, another advantage is palate. Now, okay, so I eat a relatively diverse diet. That said, I eat no wheat, no cow's milk except for butter, and very little sugar. I don't drink coffee, and I don't have very much alcohol, right? So it's diverse enough and quite healthy, but it's also kind of same because I'm a white waspy woman and I do live in California, so there's a little bit of Mexican food in there, but like generally it's kind of all the same, even though it is healthy and somewhat diverse. The moms I received breast milk from all have a huge plethora of foods and different diets, and there was a lovely Asian woman that we got a couple of donations from, and a number of Mexican women we got donations from, and a couple of European white Caucasian women we got some donations from. Different ages, right? So different generations. And while, you know, I'm pretty sure as they disclosed there wasn't a huge amount of caffeine or a huge amount of alcohol, even if there was, it means that she's exposed to these different things and also different flavors. I mean, I don't drink the breast milk, and I don't think enough people have to know that like it tastes different, but it definitely must taste different because it comes from the blood and it comes from, you know, your body that you put into with different foods. So it must taste differently. And so she, at 10 months, now eats everything. She has pretty much never said no to a single food, and because I'm a tracker, she's eaten over 100 foods by her 10-month birthday, which is today, by the way. And so she will eat anything and everything. And again, this could be for a number of different reasons. I started quite young with solids because she was quite ready for it because she is hungry. And also we did all this solid starts, and you know, I gave her a variety because I was curious, you know, about her palate. So it could be for other reasons, but I also believe that a big part of it has to do with the fact that even early doors, she had like lots of different flavors from this breast milk. So there you go. So there's antibodies and palates. And then finally, I kind of love this story. So again, I did my risk assessment. It took quite a bit of work, but I am a solo mom by choice, which means that she had a donor sperm, donor daddy, donor. We don't call him donor daddy, we just call him a donor. And that was part of how I was able to have my baby, have Ren, right? So it's me on my own, but there's this element of a donor. And so not only was that part of the donor, but then we also had this breast milk, milk donations. And it was just me, and yet I had this community of women who sacrificed, I don't know, who were generous, who gave this milk to my kid to help make her chunky and happy and fat and lovely and full and fed and sated. And they are part of her story now, and I am so grateful to them, and I'm so grateful to share it with you, so that if this is something you're thinking about, you might consider it. There are, you know, risks, there are pros and cons, right? Risks and rewards, but one of my favorite things is that it takes a village, and her village happened to be a bunch of other moms donating their breast milk. And so I love that story, and it's really wonderful and has led to great things. So we're almost at the end of our milk donation journey. She's 10 months and we'll start to transition away from it. But I'm just so delighted that this was part of her story.